What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Game 2 lineup HQ for the NBA. We're going to break down some players and build you a couple teams real quick for the NBA Finals here. Golden State and Boston. 1-0 Boston. A little shocker for some people out there in Game 1. And very important game, Game 2, I say. If Boston wins this puppy, we're looking at a sweep. It's a done deal. Oh man, Golden State's already hanging by a thread. I don't know, man. It's rough, and you lose this one, go back to Boston, you're in trouble. But they win this one. Who knows what could happen? What do you think, Erik?
Yeah, I've been on Boston forever. We talked about that on the last show. Boston has been the team I've been riding, to the team I have futures on. I stayed firm on that. I didn't hedge off or anything. I just think I pretty much agreed with everything you said last show. And then in terms of hanging by a thread, the Warriors are awesome, right? No one is they're in the finals for a reason. They have Steph Curry, they have Draymond Green, etc. But the funny thing about this matchup is that if you just set aside the fact that Steph Curry is Steph Curry, and honestly that Draymond is still great, but he's not the Draymond of 3-4 years ago, that scored 35 points in a game 7 of the finals. He's just not quite that, at least offensive player anymore. And so every spot besides Steph and maybe Draymond between these two teams, the Celtics are better, and kind of significantly better. The Warriors don't have Derek White to bring in off the bench. They don't have Grant Williams. They don't even have a Peyton Pritchard, right? If they had a Peyton Pritchard, they would be happy. And they just don't have any of those guys. And so, maybe I'm being a little bit of a prisoner in the moment, because obviously the Warriors were winning the overwhelming majority of that last game. But I think it was the Celtics figuring out how, the Warriors are a unique matchup, and figuring out how you have to play them. I mean, Udoka was playing Daniel Tice in the second quarter and stuff. And so I just think they got kind of some of that out of their system. And I feel pretty good about the Celtics moving forward.
It's, to me, it feels like I've seen this show before from Boston, what they did in Game 1. It seems like almost sometimes Udoka says, I'm willing to sacrifice 3 quarters. Just keep me close. Just keep me close, because I know what needs to be done, but I don't want to spring it too early and let them readjust.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it against Milwaukee. He did it against Miami, and they put up some massive fourth quarters against those teams to win games. And he did it in Game 1. Just don't get blown out going into the fourth quarter. We're going to be all right. And then he springs you with in this case, he did a lot more switching in the fourth quarter on those screens, and it paid off. And Steve Kerr, notoriously slow in game to adjust. He's certainly not going to adjust within a quarter like that. So that's all they wanted to do. Like I said, I'd feel better for the Warriors if it wasn't the first time I've seen it from Udoka. He's really good at this, and so they're in trouble because, like you said, personnel-wise, they're outmatched. I hate to say it, and I hope it's a good series. I hope we get a good series out of it, but I think, just like I said going into Game 1, they're a little bit overrated, man. They have Steph Curry. Clay's slower, older, not as good on defense. It's just Draymond's not as good as he used to be, and what else after that? Andrew Wiggins is nice, but he's not Kevin Durant, man. When you can just dump the ball to some guy and just dump the ball to him, and you don't have to worry about anything else. But we're on to Game 2. We need to build some rosters here and figure out what happens for DFS. So in Game 1, did anything jump out to you in Game 1 fantasy-wise that maybe you didn't think was going to happen?
Ooh, that I didn't think was going to happen?
I'll give you one for me.
Yeah.
For me, I honestly didn't think that we were going to get that. We talked about before Game 1, we said you don't need the stars because the stars aren't Luka and Giannis and these guys. So you don't have to have Tatum and Curry, and that's fine. That kind of played out, especially with Tatum. But we said there's no real scrubs there, and I was surprised they gave not only gave Peyton Pritchard that many minutes and that much offensive free roll, but that he was that effective, man. So that kind of makes me think, well, wait a minute. Are they going to play in 15 to 20 minutes a game? Because if they do, we might have to think about him.
I think that's a great point, because that didn't jump out to me as something, because like we talked about it, the game going small, right? Al Horford at center playing Derek White, even not even playing someone like Grant Williams, which in turn then, as we saw, made the Warriors take Kevon Looney off the floor. And that actually ended up making them worse because Jordan Poole was so bad. They couldn't find, and Otto played okay from a box score perspective, but Otto didn't quite do enough to kind of solidify that. And God bless Iggy, but I mean, it's kind of over, I think, for Iggy. I mean, he's still brilliant, but I don't think the body has it left in him anymore to be guarding Jason Tatum in the fourth quarter of the NBA Finals, and he killed their offense. So they just didn't have any way to adjust to the Boston small ball lineup. And interestingly enough, like you said, they made the run with Peyton Pritchard, and Marcus Smart sat on the bench till like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter because Boston was just dominating with it was Pritchard, White, Jalen, Tatum, and Horford, I believe. And so like even Marcus Smart isn't like completely safe there. He's willing to ride kind of that hot hand, which I also think is a good thing. But the theme still to me is whether it's Pritchard or whatever, the small ball aspect of things. I think the Warriors are going to want to try to keep Looney out there and playing because he's just probably their fifth best player. And his offensive rebounding was really big for them. But if he can't stay on the floor against the small ball team, I don't know why the Celtics would go away from it, right? I just think it's their best lineup. I think we might see even more Al Horford than we saw in the last game. Even more, we could see more Derek White, more Peyton Pritchard. I think that's just clearly the best thing for the Celtics to do. So that's kind of how I'm going to build my teams: is lean more into the small ball side of things on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, if we're just strictly judging on game one, the Peyton Pritchard, we both thought Derek White was going to play a big part in the series, and that was fine. I expected that. The Peyton Pritchard stuff came at the expense of Marcus Smart. 30 minutes, and that's not a Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart's like a 40-minute guy, 40-plus minutes, but he got bumped. Now, what's going to happen in game two? It could be some different things here. Like you can't be a prisoner to game one, is what we always say, because you got to have that short-term memory. But so anything could happen here. And just like Jason Tatum, we expected him to have a harder time in this series with Wiggins. It held true. He was 3 of 17 from the field, but just like that, it can change on a dime, man. And he can get hot tonight, and that's that. So let's talk about captains here. After that performance, Tatum's going to be really, really under-owned. Curry's going to be more owned than he was. He's going to be even heavier owned if that's possible. Jaylen Brown led everybody in the entire game in usage rate, which is something we kind of hit on in game one. He was going to be the guy maybe if Tatum was going to draw blanks here. So what do you think about captain here on DraftKings?
I still do like two things, really. I still do like what we talked about. Basically, everything we talked about the other day held true. Steph just went nuclear in the first quarter, right? He hit 6 threes in the first quarter. And from there on, it was like, okay, Steph is locked in to lineups and probably locked into the captain just through one quarter of play. From then on, he only hit 1 3 the rest of the game. They really adjusted and started to take him away. So I still feel confident in what we talked about with the Tatum and Steph thing, not necessarily needing those guys in the captain. And so, again, you pointed out, Jalen led the entire game in usage. He also played a lot better than maybe he had played against Miami. Again, like we talked about, someone like Clay isn't going to give him many fits like the Butlers and Oladipos did last series. So I do still really like that angle of Jaylen Brown. But I think your point is 100% spot on. People are going to be a prisoner to that first game. And Tatum is going to go from whatever the highest owned captain or co-highest owned captain with Steph to much lower. I mean, he still might be the second highest, but basically because he missed some shots, we're gonna bump him all the way down, and he can make those shots. And we saw what he did from a passing perspective in that game. So if that maintains, and now some of those jumpers fall, it's like he's the clear-cut captain, and we're discounting him ownership-wise for really no reason.
Yeah, I let's plug him in there. I just think that the ownership is going to be down on him. He took 17 shots. He'll make more than that. I've seen the guy get hot, and these guys are streaky. And we can fill out our other utilities here because I think I have a different feel for it than I did going into game one, where I think, okay, we can play some of these bench guys now for cheaper salary. So we can We can play some stars. Both teams pretty much went with a pretty straightforward 8-man rotation, heavy minutes on the starters, and he gets some minutes off the bench. Otto Porter played really well offensively, but I don't expect him to duplicate like 80% from the three-point line. That's kind of one of those things. Here's where I'll say, what do you think about this? So we get the news after the game, that Gary Payton, was an emergency guy.
Yep.
And that Steve Kerr says he could, that could ramp up here this game if we really need him. Okay, well, you kind of need him now. And what you did in the fourth quarter didn't work. So could we maybe see, because I thought, man, they could maybe play some Wiggins and Payton in the game at the same time and really have a solid 2 defensive guys and some guys who can do something for you on offense, maybe, as opposed to Iguodala, like you said, just don't got it anymore, man. And could we see Gary Payton get some extra minutes here? It surely seemed like Kerr was hinting at that.
That was the one kind of big thing I was curious what you were gonna have a stance on, because that's kind of if I were like a betting man, right? I don't really foresee the Celtics changing too much. Like you said, maybe distribute the minutes a little less Pritchard, a little more Marcus Smart, whatever. But the general game plan, hopefully no freaking Tice. No more. Let's get rid of those Tice minutes. But other than that, I expect the Celtics to be pretty similar in how they play their rotation. But the Warriors end is figuring out basically like that 5th guy, right? We know that the big 4 are going to play, about what they're going to play. Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond. And figuring out that last guy is the piece that Kerr still really, really needs to figure out. And I think if Gary Payton, we keep getting more and more positive reports. They're still saying, we kind of don't know. Kerr is, but I think he's just leading us on. Gary Payton, there was even a quote that said, I keep telling coach, I'm 100% and I'm ready to go or whatever. And I think their back's up against the wall now, and he's the piece that they're probably going to try. Because I mean, if the guys like Jordan Poole and Iggy and those guys aren't going to score anyway, you might as well put the best defender that you have out there to help with Tatum and Brown and those guys. So I think he cracks the rotation, and then it's like, does he play 12 minutes or does he play, 28? I have no idea, but I think he gets in there tonight.
And it goes, even if you're not going to play him, it just you have to figure out whose minutes are you going to take, who's going to not get those minutes that got him in game 1, and that's the guys you really mark off your list and don't even play them. So you got to figure that one out. But Steve Kerr's had an extra day now to figure something out, man. You got to do something here, Stevie. So we got Tatum and captain. Let's start rattling off some utility guys. I like to just play it game by game. I don't have a set strategy. I like to look and say, well, this guy was pretty poor in game 1. I think he bounces back, because that's just the way the NBAs are. Like, if 2 teams are pretty good, really good, and somebody goes down 1-0 in game 1, we're almost conditioned. It's going to be 1-1 after 2 games. That's just the way it is, right? So with that being said, you got it's the same thing with the players. If these guys are good players, if they have a bad game 1, usually they bounce back in game 2. Mm-hmm. So that's what we said about Tatum. Any other bounce back candidates out there that we can ride here on this roster tonight?
Draymond, for sure. The whole time you were talking, all I could think about was Draymond.
Boy, was he was shooting some terrible. He was awful from the offensive side, man.
So bad. But his role, again, the thing like we talked about, his role as the fulcrum of the offense, right? Everything's flowing through him. He has to play center more, which we saw double-digit rebounds, right? And they're not going to have – like, they had times in the fourth quarter the other night where it just didn't look like the Warriors. They're like kind of stagnant on offense. And I just think they're going to come in, and Draymond's going to be kind of the lead of that not happening again, right? They can't just get blown out by 30 points in the fourth quarter and score whatever, 14 points, 16 points they scored in the fourth quarter. So I just think Draymond's going to turn it around. He's not like he's going to come out and shoot like Al Horford did or something, but I just can't imagine he doesn't have a pretty big bounce back here. And you could get an old school, right? 10, 11, 10, and some steals and blocks from Draymond.
I like that one. I'll say let's I'm not gonna say he's a free square. He's got some, but I think a guy that we can still play again in game 2 is Derek White. Still a cheap salary. He's going to get his minutes. Like, he's almost as good in this matchup as Marcus Smart is for this team, even though Marcus Smart's the heart and soul of the team. But like Derek, now I don't expect him to offensively go out there and do that again, but he'll rack up his stats, man. Defensively, he's in there. So that boosts up our per player average now left. So we got about 7,300 left. We'll fill out 2 more spots. Who's next on this board for us in game 2?
I do still think kind of some of the similar stuff we talked about, like with Golden State having their back up against the wall and really not having anybody beyond the big 4 to go to. That just means, like, we have Steph for 39 minutes here. I think we could see 43, like low to mid 40s for Steph, because like I said, I mean, they can't lose this game. You cannot lose both the 2 games at home to start the series. And the fact that they have nobody else, right? Draymond can't score. Clay's a shell of himself. They can't even keep Jordan Poole on the floor because he can't play defense. It's just all Steph. Like, if it's going to be close, or if like we're talking about, we expect Golden State to bounce back and stuff. If that's going to happen, I just don't see how it's not like 43 minutes and 40 real points from Steph Curry. I know Boston played better against him in the second half, but if Steph Curry's out there for 43 minutes, I just don't see how he doesn't put up a big fantasy line.
Yeah, I agree. They need his offense, so we'll plug him in there. We still got almost $6,000 for every player per player for 2 spots here. We can definitely make it happen. We've talked about some cheaper guys on that end of the spectrum you could take. The mid range is good. Let's see here. We got 2 Celtics, 2 Warriors. I don't know. Is there anybody else jumping out to you in this range that we can put on this roster, or what's going on?
My general take, though, I don't have any like super crazy guys jumping out, but if I were to build this like Steph Draymond team, I know Tatum is in captain, but if I'm including Steph and Draymond, I'm not necessarily going to make a rule, but my general idea is going to be then more Boston heavy, just because of everything that we just talked about. Like, if they're going to win, and if Draymond's going to bounce back, and if Steph's going to, have a big game, there's really not a lot else to go around for these other guys beyond, again, the big 4 and like the Jordan Poole. Like, if anything, I'm going to like bet Jordan Poole unders, tonight. I just don't see it with these other guys. Maybe, like the Gary Payton thing, or maybe Otto Porter, right? Maybe he turns it around defensively and he's the guy figuring out who that minutes bump guy is, right? It could be Kevon Looney. It could be Kevon Looney for all we know. Maybe these other guys are just not it, and Kerr just says, screw it, we're just going to let Kevon play 35 minutes. I would maybe play one of those guys, but I lean more towards the Boston side here. I'm partial to Al Horford. That's my guy. We've been riding him all playoffs, and he absolutely crushed again last game. And he didn't even play that much. That's kind of the scary thing from if you fade Al Horford is he only played 32 minutes last game. And I know he shot the ball well, and we don't expect that, but I think there's even more ceiling to him in this series.
I can get behind Al Horford for sure. I could get behind the bounce back, more minutes for Marcus Smart in this game, and he got some good clean looks, man. It just he didn't hit him there after the first quarter, but we're going to stop it right there on DraftKings. At 4,100, there's a lot left you can do with that last spot. We won't fill it in. Let's go to Fanduel. MVP. We've talked about Curry, how good he has to be, how good we think Tatum can bounce back. Like, is it one of those 2 guys in the MVP?
I think so. FanDuel is always a little bit funnier because of the weird format and the lack of salary multiplier and stuff. So you don't get, even off the bad game from Tatum, you don't get quite the same ownership discount, right? I do think Steph is going to be the guy that most people will gravitate to in MVP, but I do still think Tatum is going to be pretty popular on FanDuel specifically. And so that does kind of make me like Jaylen, right? We've liked the Jaylen Brown angle, for multiple days now, and nothing really changed other than Steph had 1 hot quarter, and what if Steph doesn't have that 1 hot quarter and Boston figures it out from the get-go? Jaylen Brown, again, you mentioned it earlier, had the highest usage rate in the game. He can get some steals and blocks, which are better on FanDuel. I kind of like him for a pretty big ownership discount.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. Curry will be overwhelmingly the most popular MVP. So We'll change it up. Go Jaylen Brown. Does that mean can you possibly fade both Tatum and because if you're going to put Jaylen Brown in that spot, I don't think you're going to play Tatum and Curry on this roster. So you're going to fade one of them. Could you fade them both, or is that just asking? That's just asking too much, right? On Fanduel.
Oh, it's tough. I think it's probably asking too much just because of how unbelievably unlikely it is that they're not one of the top 5 raw scorers, and you don't get dinged for their salary. But it's an interesting angle that I actually hadn't thought about. If I was making 150 teams, I mean, there's a scenario, right, in which Steph shoots bad and Tatum shoots bad again.
I mean,
it's there.
yeah.
And Draymond, maybe it's a Clay game, right? We don't really love Clay. We've been
Yeah.
kind of dogging him, but why can't it be a Clay game? Why can't Marcus Smart hit threes or Al? Right? I think it's it's not my first team. Like if I'm making my building my first team, I'm probably having Tatum or Curry on there, but I don't think it's that ridiculous.
I mean, now how many 3-pointers did Curry hit in the first quarter? Like 6?
6.
Okay, so he hit 1 3-pointer in the last 3 quarters of that game.
Yeah. Yes.
So that could just have been a bad quarter coming off a week layoff, and we weren't ready for it. But don't worry, we know what to do with Curry now. So he may not even come close to that stat line for game 2 that he had in game 1. And then Tatum, yeah, like you said, he could get the Wiggins treatment here and really just struggle from the field. So it's a possibility, but yeah, it's tough. But so we're gonna play one of these guys probably in the star position. Which one do you want to go, Tatum or Curry? You want to go with another?
I think Curry. I think Curry
Okay.
makes more. If you're playing Jalen in the MVP, I think Curry makes the most sense in star.
And then in pro, I want to throw a name out there that I want to squeeze on the lineup somehow. So we didn't really talk about him on DraftKings, but it's Andrew Wiggins. He's gonna play a lot. He took I was kind of surprised. He's on one end, he's guarding the best player that Boston has, and he's doing a good job. On the other end, you would think Curry, Clay, Jordan Poole, and these guys are gonna take up the offensive role and help him out a little bit, give him a little rest. He took the second most shots for the Warriors behind Curry.
Yeah.
He's playing on one end, getting blocks and steals, very active. And on the other end, he's taking a lot of shots. And he plays a lot of minutes. So I think Andrew Wiggins is a guy, just rock steady, man, in a showdown here. You can play him wherever. I think you could play him in the multiplier spots, or you can play him in the utility spots on either side. I don't think he's going to ever sink your team. So I'm thinking, let's just, what about Andrew Wiggins here in the pro spot? And
I like it. I really like it. I actually hadn't looked at his stat line all that closely from last game, but kind of similar to the Steph thing. Even more, Draymond is in this category too, but even more than Clay, certainly more than Poole and Looney, Wiggins has to play. Like, they don't have anybody else that can play perimeter defense and do the things like you just said, actually score, right? They might have, we're talking about Gary Payton. We've talked about Iggy. They have these guys that can come in and maybe do one or the other. Poole can score, can't play defense. GP can play defense, not really a scorer. Wiggins is the only guy that can guard Jason Tatum and be a threat on offense. And so he only played 35 minutes. I know they missed, a minute or two at the end to the blowout. But, I mean, I think you could see the same thing with him that you see from 43, 44 minutes. Like, if it's close, there's no reason to pull him out for Andre Iguodala. I'm sorry, And so we saw the blocks and steals. The upside is pretty crazy. So I really, really like him. I'm glad you brought him up.
All right. So we plug him in there. Now we've got almost 10 grand for 2 spots left and lots of, we've got the Derek White down there, really cheap on FanDuel, some of the other guys. But you think there's any chance on God's green earth that Jordan Poole bounces back for a big fantasy game in this series? Because sometimes he just looks lost out there, man.
I really like Jordan Poole, and he was a fun moneymaker for most of the year, especially before Clay came back. But I just feel like this is the worst possible matchup for him. There's no advantage for him on offense, right? He's a good scorer, but there's no real – it's not like he can go attack whatever, Jalen Brunson or There's no good matchup for him on offense, so he's not really helping him that much, and he's their worst defender.
He's a turnstile.
He is a Zach Lowe. I don't know if anybody listens to the Low Post podcast. Zach Lowe said they talked quite a bit about Jordan Poole, and he said he can't be a piece of paper floating in the wind or whatever on defense, which is like what he described him as. He's just like wandering around, getting burnt by, giving up free buckets and open threes, and like he's just lost. And you just can't learn that overnight against the best team in the NBA, right? And like there's no possessions off on defense either. Like who can he guard that he can't get exposed? They'll just try to attack him, try to get a switch with him, with Tatum or Brown. But even like if he's guarding Derek White can expose him. He did, and he just did. So like I just don't see a path other than like if he comes out and starts like Steph did, right? Hits 4 or 5 threes, where then Kerr is like, okay, we got to ride this guy for his offense. I just, if anything, I see more downside. Like they just say, screw it. We're going to play Otto. We're going to play Gary Payton. We're going to play Looney. We're going to play those guys. I just see more downside than upside. So I don't even really want to chase the Jordan Poole unicorn.
Don't want to chase Poole. And then another guy we didn't talk about, he's questionable tonight, Robert Williams. He's been questionable all playoffs. I don't think he was particularly effective in game one, and maybe, just maybe, that questionable could lead to an out tag here later because they really don't think they need him. And I mean, they haven't been shy about letting Robert Williams sit out a game in these series. So true. I wouldn't be like totally shocked because when he was on the court, he's supposed to at the very least, just secure the rebounds, and Looney was crushing him on the glass there for a long time.
Yes.
So. No, I don't know about Robert Williams. You have to, if Robert Williams were limited tonight or out, who do you think benefits?
It's definitely. I know I talk too much about Al Horford, but it's probably Horford. Derek White then has the rock solid floor that we already like, but then it probably is Pritchard. After that, I don't know if I love him as much for FanDuel, but I mean he is extremely cheap. That's for sure. If we see Robert Williams play more, we got 24 minutes last game. If it's more like the 15 we saw in Game 7 against Miami, I just think it means more small ball, which means more Al Horford at center. I don't even think this is a great Grant Williams series. Like it's fine, he can play, but it's not. I just think it's more White, Smart probably. You mentioned Smart only got 30 minutes. It's probably him actually. There's no real way for him to stay at that 30-minute mark if Robert Williams also plays less. So it's one of the guards, and I don't know that White can get any more minutes, and we know that Brown and Tatum can't really. So it's probably Pritchard or Marcus Smart.
Fair enough. We got 2 spots left here. What's our next spot? There's a lot of options.
Smart. I like Smart.
Okay.
Smart's great on FanDuel, man. Like the steals and blocks that he can rack up. He's guarding Steph and stuff, which helps. And I think the kind of so game in game one should help out ownership wise.
And that would leave us 75 for the last spot. There's a lot of options there. We talked about some of them. So I'll let you guys feel that out on your own. Otto Porter had a big game. He played well enough to where I don't know if I'm not saying he's going to duplicate it, but at least in Steve Kerr's eyes as a coach, he's going to say, oh, well, I can play some more Otto Porter here because he was good in game one. So you're going to get some minutes there. Pritchard, like you said, a lot of like the Robert Williams, if he were limited tonight, that has a trickle-down effect on a guy like Peyton Pritchard. So even though everybody would say, oh, no, Robert Williams, we got to put Grant Williams in there because now he's going to play 30 minutes. That's not necessarily true. So we got that. And then there's Gary Payton sitting down there. I think he carves out a bigger role tonight. Mm-hmm. It's just you just don't know what he's going to do on offense. But like Otto Porter the other night, kind of didn't expect that. You never know. He could get out and run, get some fast break dunks, and all of a sudden that combined with minutes and defensive stats, the guy's going to rack up a fairly decent game for this salary. So we'll let you guys fill that last spot out. But I think that's just where I think this team is definitely unique. When you started off and you put Curry in that spot and you don't use Tatum, if people are going to use Curry in that star spot, they're probably going Tatum in the MVP. I don't think very many people are going to list people ahead of Curry except for Tatum. So by going Jaylen Brown and then Curry, I think we're automatically pretty unique on FanDuel. And from there, it's just all gravy. So you got anything before we jump out of here on Sunday, Erik?
No, mostly just go Celtics. Let's go Celtics. We're riding the Celtics. And Warriors overrated bandwagon is what we're riding. The only other thing, as you were talking that through, I do think an interesting angle, probably the easiest way to win one of these contests, if I'm like multi-entering, is making a rule of only one Steph or Tatum. Like, only make lineups with one of those two guys and then build for all the scenarios, right? If I have Tatum, what are all the different scenarios where Steph fails and Gary Payton, Draymond, Clay, maybe it is Poole. I don't know. I hate it on Poole, but it could be Poole, Clay, et cetera, Wiggins, right? And then doing the opposite, which is kind of what we did here, right? Well, if Tatum fails, Jaylen Brown's pretty good. Marcus Smart's pretty good. Al Horford's pretty good, et cetera. So that's not the probably most likely team to win. But if I'm trying to carve out scenarios to give me the cleanest path to first place, it's probably that. So
you heard it, guys. Game 2 should be fun. Do or die for the Warriors. We'll see how it plays out. We appreciate you tuning in on a Sunday. We'll be back for Game 3 later on this week. For Beimfohr, I was your chop. Good luck in those GPPs. For now, we're out of here.